activity for short periods of time is really, really significant. We're working with all kinds of adulthood learning and behavioral challenges, brain injury, etc. If we just simply did interval training with these types of folks, they'd be so much better off. It's amazing what can happen. And all of these chemicals have neuroprotective properties, nerve protective, so we're protecting the nerve cells by exercise. Now there's a point where we can overdo it. There's a lot of pathological exercisers out there, if you will. And we could have debates about that another time, but there's folks that really, really push the envelope when it comes to, you look at triathlons, you look at the super long distance running right now, 100, 120 miles in a day type thing, the excessive, biking and things like that. I'm all about moderation. Too much or too little of anything is not going to kill you. You want to be kind of right smack in the middle, but there's a whole host of consequences with extreme training. But the bottom line is we want to do what's best for the brain in the context, in the context of what we're talking about. We want to do what's best for the brain. So we're talking generally about kind of normal average activities, cardiovascular workouts for 20 minutes or a half an hour, that kind of thing. So also too, all these kind of feel-good brain hormones, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, these are enhanced by exercise. We know that. Exercise is just as good as cocaine and other things for enhancing feel-good centers of the brain. We know that. Just as good as cocaine, sex, chocolate, you name it. It's just as good. What's that?
Chocolate?
Oh, the chocolate. All right. We have a debate on the chocolate.
I'm just thinking about my wife.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, human growth hormone. Everybody's heard about that. The fountain of youth, human growth hormone. A lot of folks, trying to go for therapies where they can get either direct injections of human growth hormone. Some people need it, or looking at using precursors for human growth hormone. The bottom line is, this is where this high-intensity anaerobic exercise, interval training, where you, again, moderate pace for a short period of time, and then you go all out for a very short period of time. So that would say be 5 minutes of jogging and 45 seconds of running as fast as you possibly can. And then 5 minutes of jogging and then 45 seconds of running as fast as you can. You only have to do about 15 minutes of that. And that is what produces this right here, human growth hormone. Interval training is the one thing right now that is positively showing to impact human growth hormone. Now, not everybody can go out there and do that kind of stuff. It doesn't just have to be running. It could be jump rope. It could be, hitting a heavy bag. It could be all kinds of different things. But the bottom line is submaximal activity and then pushing the envelope for very short periods of time. That's where that comes in, and that's the fountain of youth right there. That's where all the research is going on right now. So, exercise the brain. Every year of college education decreases Alzheimer's risk by 17%. So we've got to exercise the brain as well. You don't use it, you lose it. All these kind of cliches that we've had around for ages. You are what you eat, and you don't use it, you lose it. These things are so true, and they're truer now than ever, because things have become so complex and our thinking has become so scattered about what it means to be healthy. Think simple. You don't use it, you lose it. And that's a key concept right there. So we've got to exercise the brain. Basically exercise and doing cognitive activities education slows the rate of decline of these new nerve cells in the brain and increases their ability to survive. So again, exercise can help grow these new nerve cells, and then you've got to do the learning that will continue them growing. Once they're there, it doesn't mean they're there and they stick around. They've got to be worked once they're there. So the working comes from learning things. My grandfather is a perfect example. Really was a mentor to me in my early days, and I didn't even know it, but I can reflect on it now and see. He was a Cornell graduate, adjunct professor of veterinary medicine up there as well. But he was also a master photographer, he was a singer, he was a songwriter, he was a writer, he was a, you name it, a mechanic, a car mechanic. This guy could do anything, because every 3 years he would learn a new skill. He lived to 95 years of age, and it was a bad infection that did him in. He probably would have gone to 120. But the bottom line is, he used his brain constantly. You walk into his library, thousands of books on the wall. It reminds me of going to the Biltmore House. Every single one of those books on the shelves is read. His character wouldn't let him put a book on the shelf until it was finished being read. Granted, he didn't have time for family activities because he was so busy doing what he did, but his mind was as sharp as a tack till the day he passed. And physically as well, was just a pretty incredible specimen of physical health at that age. So it goes to show you don't use it, you lose it, but you've got to exercise those new nerve cells. And you've got to do that by learning new skills all the time. One comment I won't tolerate from my clients is, it's too late, or I'm too old for that. I just don't buy that for a minute. Until the day we take our last breath, we've got to learn new things. And this is the reason why, is to help those nerve cells grow and to stave off the effects of dementia, because we are all declining. We're all aging. We can't stop that, but we can slow it down significantly. Okay. Wow, that was my New York version right there. It was the marketing. I'm driving around looking for a spot for 20 minutes, thinking, am I going to get in there? But do you have any questions? I like this even more. So it's nice to get through this stuff and really just talk about what you all want to talk about. How am I doing on time, Brooke?
You're fine. Maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So, any questions? Any questions? Yeah.
That internet program with Lumosity, is
Right.
that pretty good?
It is. We incorporate that into some of our protocols. The bottom line is just do something. It's getting a lot better, and obviously the founder of Lumosity is Michael Merzenich. He's the father of neuroplasticity, essentially, about how the brain can grow and adapt and change over time. He's a brilliant, brilliant mind, and Posit Sciences organization. They're doing amazing things in the area of plasticity research. So yeah, but is it any better than picking up a word search book? Or, I tell people, go to Barnes & Noble. They've got a whole section of all the word searches, Sudoku and crossword and all that. I'm old-fashioned in that respect. I like to pick up to do things. But then again, there's a million apps coming out right now that can really work out your brain as well. There's one I just saw today. One of my patients brought it to me. It's called 4 Pics, 1 Word. PICS, 4 Pics, 1 Word. And they show 4 pictures that seemingly have nothing to do with each other. And you can spend an hour trying to figure out what the common denominator of these pictures is. And they have certain letters at the bottom, and the word is built into those letters. Some are very easy, but others you'll break your iPhone screen trying to figure it out. It's pretty intense. Those things that really make your brain stretch are incredibly powerful, and Lumosity does get higher and lower in the intensity. The key is dealing with it appropriate for the individual's brain. If we're dealing with somebody with dementia, we want to stretch their brain, but not too far, because then the frustration sets in, and then they wall off, and they can't do any more problem solving. Or their caregivers wind up jumping in because they don't like to see the frustration on their partner's on their partner's face. But yeah, absolutely, anything. Just pick up anything. I'm a big fan. Start learning a language. I picked up Portuguese a couple of years ago, and I'm still trying to learn it. I was going to Brazil, and I just made it a point and took some classes. And can't speak to save my life, but I'm learning it. My oldest daughter, she picked up guitar last year, and I'm picking it up with her. I never played an instrument in my life, so following my grandfather's footsteps. But yeah, anything, and that's a great tool. Anybody else? Yeah.
What exercise you mentioned for the IGF-1? What exercises help the insulin?
The insulin growth factor is your good old aerobic exercise. Getting out there, getting your heart rate up. Jogging, bicycling. It could be trampoline. It could be hitting the heavy bag. Jump rope. Jump rope's a little more intense for most people. People have been doing it for a long time. Most people will push into the anaerobic threshold where they're not using oxygen anymore when they jump rope. But you want to be in the aerobic threshold, and you can go online and find all the parameters and calculations for your for your gender, your age, your weight, all of that, your maximum heart rate, all of that. The key is you want your muscles and all to be using oxygen to create energy. If they're pushing past that and going to anaerobic activity, that's where other things happen. And if you sustain anaerobic activity, there can be some significant consequences on the body. That's why I talk about the extreme training, whether it's ultramarathoning and things like that. People's physiology changes very dramatically when they train anaerobically for too long. And that's a whole different population subset. But for the most part, basic, get on the treadmill, get out on the streets, do some trail running, hiking, whatever the case may be, just get the heart rate up.
Does it help regulate the blood sugar levels, or does it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's, we know full well that people that, without, with the exception of significant genetic barriers, people that exercise just have more stable, better blood sugar levels than the average person. And more importantly, the things like hemoglobin A1C that are really better predictors of things like diabetes. So, yeah, people that...
I have diabetes, that's why
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, and it's, really depends. There are folks that have adult onset diabetes that are on insulin, that aren't on insulin. There are people that we've seen full well that, put their nose to the grindstone and get themselves to a healthy blood sugar standpoint. And then there's others, a woman with dementia we were working with, we had her doing some of this light exercise, but she was spiking blood sugar levels as high as 500 and she was on an insulin pump. So, with incorporating some basic activity into her schedule, she would kind of top out at about 200, even with the pump. So even at that late stage, when her pancreas isn't even working anymore, she's still able to have some improvements. But yeah, the basic cardiovascular exercise and potentially looking at the interval training as well. Depending, you have to be careful too, because if you're depleting blood sugar levels too quickly, the interval training might be too aggressive. So it's a case-by-case basis.
I watch mine pretty good.
Anybody else?
How can you determine how much is too much?
How much exercise?
Yeah.
Again, it's based on the individual situation. I have to take everything that way because every person that walks through my doors is so incredibly different. But a lot of it is, the medical history is incredibly important. Genetics play a certain role, but bottom line, the average healthy person should be able to push their body pretty significantly. The key is most people aren't doing it enough. Really should be doing something every day. And people go to the gym 2-3 times a week. From a muscle building standpoint, you can get away and build muscle by working out 2-3 times a week. That'll work. But to maintain cardiovascular health and maintain these benefits of healthy brain function with aerobic exercise, you pretty much need to do it every day. You can take Sunday off or Monday off, whatever your day is. But it pretty much needs to be every day. And
But as far as the time factor, say you go out on a 3-hour bike ride.
Right.
Is that, if you've been doing that for a long period of time, is that healthy or?
It really depends on the intensity of it, if you're going all out or if it's just a kind of stroll on the, stroll through Fletcher Park or, ride on the Blue Ridge Parkway. They're going to be two completely different animals. So it really depends on the individual's abilities. If somebody's doing high intensity for 3 hours, again, for me that falls into the potentially dangerous territory. And I've got my critics on that, but I've been in practice long enough to see what happens with people's nervous systems when they do that type of training. I have somebody that does, is an ultra-marathon runner, and I tap a reflex on him, he can kick a hole through a wall. He's got a resting heart rate of 40 beats per minute, which is near dead almost. And some other things going on. His muscle mass is really quite low compared to, say, a sprinter or somebody like that. So, again, there's extremes. Too little, too much, not good. I think, in general, the average population should fit somewhere in the middle and do their, 20 minutes of cardiovascular activity per day. And it's to ability level as well. So if people have bad knees or they can't do other things, simply going for a walk or a hike with, walking sticks. The more you can involve the body, the better. Walking sticks are the greatest invention. People need to use them more. It's not just for bad knees, it's for full body workout. So, it's a tolerance. People do train for things, and there are healthy ways to train in the off season. We do work with, Olympic sprinters and people like that, and they train very differently in the off season than they do when they're going for their, their low numbers. Yeah.
What about exercise in the context of household activities like raking the lawn? Or things like that. Those are all considered good?
Yeah, that's one thing we hear all the time. It's a great question because people say, well, I'm up and at 'em all day, and I park my car, furthest from the building kind of thing. That stuff all helps, but it needs to be sustained for a period of time. So if you're raking leaves, you want it to be, raking for 20 minutes or half an hour. You don't want to rake for 2 minutes and then take a 20-minute break and then do it again. You might get blisters if you keep going that fast, but you want it to be sustainable. People are very active around their house, doing laundry, cleaning up, all that stuff, and it's great. It's burning calories. But again, from the brain perspective, with all these little chemicals we talked about and everything, it needs to be sustained for a fairly... And the numbers are getting lower. It used to be a half an hour, then it was 20 minutes. Now it's more like 8 minutes they're talking about where you can have these benefits. Get that book, Spark, by Rady. It's a really good primer on this type of stuff that I'm talking about. But yes, as low as 8 minutes a day now is showing to have a positive impact on these types of chemicals. So it doesn't have to be a lot, it just needs to be consistent and it needs to be sustained, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you'll see these charts of, kissing burns, 5 calories per half hour or whatever. I mean, that's great, but we're not talking calories here, we're talking brain. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, that is thinking and mental activity,
Right.
learning. Have there been any studies on, say, aberrant individuals, say schizophrenic, psychotic, or whatever, and that kind of activity of certain people having 5 or 6 or 10 people inside all thinking at the same time? Have there ever been any studies done on whether any of that thinking has any growth activity of some of these chemicals?
You mean, just strictly by them doing cognitive activity having an increase in those chemicals? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, that's great stuff, but it seems to be promoted primarily by movement. Our design from a scientific perspective is being shown to be, promoted almost entirely by the way we move. You just look at the evolution of brain function over time and comparative anatomy. The more complex motor skills are, the more complex brain activity is.
But I mean, in relation to like some of those new games.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. The only studies I'm seeing in that arena with regard to technology is the fact that our attention is changing so rapidly these days. Our focus is going from one thing to the next. We're on the computer, you get a ding from your Facebook thing, you get a instant message or whatever. So you've got to attend to all these things. It's not the way our brains used to work. And they're showing developmental changes within the brain already in a 20, 30-year period. And they're estimating within 50 years we're going to have the biggest shift in brain function in a